Hello and welcome to episode 391 of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Hearts of Midlothian Football Club, the bookies' new favourites to win the Scottish Premiership. I'm Mark Donaldson and I want to take you back to Saturday, September the 27th of last year and read you the first paragraph from BBC Sports Scotland's match report from a game in Gorgie that day. Here it is. Rampant Hearts moved to the top of the Scottish Premiership with a dominant win over a listless Falkirk at a raucous Tynecastle as Lawrence Shankland became the SPFL's record goalscorer. Firstly, that seems like an eternity ago. Secondly, tonight, when we record, it's exactly 150 days later, and Hearts are still at the league summit. The big difference, though, that was game number 6 of the season. Now, there's only 10 games left. It was quite the weekend in Scottish football. Joining me to look back on a dramatic turn of events, Mr. Ewan Murray from The Guardian, who was at Tynecastle in his season ticket seat on Saturday. How are you?
Yeah, I didn't realise that date because that was the Saturday of the Ryder Cup in September.
Ah,
So when you said it, I thought that rings a bell, and why? And that was why. So I wasn't at the Falkirk game, and ordinarily where I would, like you, tune into Hearts International TV and watch Ryder Cup Saturdays are a little bit hectic and manic. So I didn't see that game. So that brings me back. I can't believe A, that Hearts at the league that long ago, and B, that was the Ryder Cup was that long ago. So thank you for that
right.
reminder. Anyway, bringing
Yeah.
things more up to date.
You're welcome. Very comfortable that day. Not as comfortable at the weekend, but still, job done. If
Yeah,
it was a good Saturday, it was a beautiful Sunday, and it was very much unexpected, with Rangers dropping points at the Tony Macaroni Macarena set price, half price, full price arena, and Celtic losing at home, and Hibs fans not even knowing if they can celebrate their first win at Celtic Park since January 2010 or 2011. We hope to be joined later on by the Livingston captain, Ryan McGowan. He's still playing. They're still playing added time between Livingston and Rangers. So once referee Ryan Lee, that well-known Hearts fan that once did a 5-1 salute during the Edinburgh Festival, blows his full-time whistle, Gowser's promised to join us from the dressing room after Livy have managed, or the Livy goalkeeper, Jerome Prior's managed to save the 13th penalty that Rangers have been awarded.
Sorry, I've cut you off. I like the joke on I like the joke at the weekend that Celtic and Rangers were both playing at the same time on
Yes.
Sundays. So you could watch the Rangers game in Sky and catch the last 25 minutes of the Celtic game. But it turned out it was the other way around.
Turned out to be the opposite, didn't it?
Exactly. Our game, I thought, actually was more comfortable than the scoreline would suggest, and more comfortable
Second
than
half
I
it was, yeah.
yeah, and more comfortable than I thought it might be against Falkirk, because I think they're a very
Hmm.
good team. Started a bit slowly, but I think there's reasons for that. But I think John McGowan, in fairness, and he is always fair, said Falkirk didn't do enough to take anything out of the game, and he conceded Hearts deserved to win. So I think sometimes 1-0 can be deceiving, and that was an example of where it kind of was. I think there was you weren't, I don't know about you, but I wasn't panicking with 5-10 minutes to go that there was going to be a sting in the tail, a la that Kilmarnock game, for example, the
Yes.
midweek game. It didn't feel like, it's probably easy to say now, but it didn't feel like that to me at the time.
It is easier to say now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, there's always that, given our history as Hearts fans, that kind of what if, and this has happened before, and goodness knows what. You just slurp from your Masters Cup and show off that you've got a
Oh,
lovely
sorry.
yellow cup for it. That's fine. It's all good. It's a nice little thing for those of you watching on YouTube. For those of you listening, you and Murray will be back at Augusta in April, but he's more concerned about the TSA pre and global entry for his trip to the US next week. That's the least of our worries, though. Today we're going to look back at the Falkirk game and we will look back at what happened on Sunday with Celtic and Rangers both dropping points. But our main focus is Hearts, 10 games to go now, starting with that 10th game against Aberdeen at Tynecastle this weekend. We will look ahead to that as well. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Science. Let's start with the team news from the weekend, Ewan. And the one player I really hoped would start was Jordi Altena, because I think that would be a kind of, right, we've spent money on a right back. We're going to play a right back as a right back to get forward against the side. But Derek McInnes thought otherwise. Three changes: Steinvender, Magnuson, and Spittle for McEntee, Benny, and Aju. Aju pulling out in the warm up. Ian Mercer sent me a message saying he's just seen Aju hit a shot and pull up with his right thigh and felt it. And ultimately, Blair Spittle came in. So that was the third change. Let's start with Steinvender instead of Altena. Derek McInnes saying that he just felt with, is it Calvin? Who's the lad
Miller.
that Calvin Miller?
Yeah.
He said he's one of Scottish football's best players, and he felt he needed more of a defensive-minded player against Calvin Miller. What did you make of the lineup and Altena not getting the nod and Steinvender coming in?
Yeah, I didn't mind it so much on that exact basis. I think Miller's a really good player. I think there was a good chance he would have gone to Celtic in the January window actually, but I think he's easily Falkirk's most dangerous player. Tends to play off that left side. So I am generally sympathetic to the Altina right back situation, but I thought on Saturday I didn't mind it so much. My bigger issue in inverted commas there is that Jamestown has now identified and signed two right backs for
Hmm.
Hearts, one of pretty decent pedigree in Borchevink, the other one for decent money in Altina, and neither of them, are deemed capable of playing every week. And I listen, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal, but I wonder about that. What profile of right back was requested? What profile of right back was signed? Why is at least one of these guys not an automatic starter? And in Derek McInnes' defence, when Altina come on against Rangers, I thought he did look very wobbly defensively. He made a couple of mistakes. When he came on against Hibs, I thought he was terrific in terms of his footballing abilities. Clearly very good on the ball, can play forward. And I felt a trick was missed by not playing him at St Mirren and playing St Mirren at the game we want to play, as I think Motherwell showed you can do on Saturday evening. So, big picture terms, I'm puzzled as to why now two right backs have come in and neither plays every week when Steinvender, who I like, but the bottom line, he's a centre back playing out of position. Why in so many games is he preferred in that place? I do have a question over that. But listen, in the distinct case of Saturday, specific case of Saturday, sorry, I didn't feel that strongly about it. And also, the team was majorly disrupted, and
Yeah.
it's not so much the individuals and who's playing and who's not playing. It's that disruption. Obviously, the goalkeeper hadn't been well. It sounded like Beningwe was going to play, which I would have disagreed with. But anyway, he was going to play. Then he's not fit to play because he gets injured on Friday, and Aju gets injured in the warm up. These are disruptions that are not very easy for a team to handle, and I think that explains the slow start to the game. But I should also say, Spittle, I thought played very well and showed.
Outstanding. Yep.
He has that thing which I bang on about. He plays forward. He always tries to play forward, uh, and I like that. And for a guy who's been pretty much out the picture for a while, he came on against Falkirk in the cup, didn't he? But I don't remember him playing much since then. I thought he did very very well, and maybe a lesson to all of us: we shouldn't write off players in favour of new players too readily because he showed he could still be useful in the closing few weeks of the season.
Let me take that and have a hopeful seamless transition to getting behind players and players
Mm.
doing well. Michael Steinvender is a centre back. It's not his fault he's been asked to play at right back. I just feel for a club with all of us trying to go in the one direction and trying to get something we haven't had in our generation. Some of the comments, personal comments about Michael Steinvender have been a little bit over the top and unnecessary, I feel, from some Hearts fans.
Yeah, I genuinely haven't seen that, but I would clearly disagree. I mean, here's a guy playing out of position. I think he's a very good centre back. He's quick, he's athletic, he's strong. He's made the odd big mistake, and that Aberdeen semi-final one last season when he got sent off, that kind of ended his season. And up until that point, I thought he'd been doing pretty well at centre back. So, I feel a bit sorry for him. He's not had an extended run in that position, and that's obviously largely been due to Craig Halkett's form. But there's been times, for example, Frankie Kent has been preferred at right centre back to him, or it looks as if Kent will come on before him, and I've disagreed with that. I think he's a far better all round football player, but I would never belittle or criticise or hammer a player who's been played out of position. I know, obviously, there's no issue with his attitude or his demeanour or the way he plays. So I would disagree with that strongly. The other part was, and we'll come on to him because I'm intrigued by him, but Chesnikov was playing essentially in front of him.
Yes.
So again, for an element of defensive protection and cover, Steinwender was probably the sensible option versus Alton. That's maybe a bit much of a risk from what we've seen of Alton as an attacking fullback to play him and Chesnikov. But sorry, I've segued to Chesnikov. You didn't ask me about, but I
No,
was
it's okay.
I was intrigued by his performance, and I'm intrigued by his gradual development.
I was also intrigued by Derek McInnes's comments talking about the hardest working winger he's ever come
Mm,
across. I think that's more of a never mind the truth. Let's just get this player up to
mm.
speed and boost his confidence as much as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, if you look at it, I think I've said this on here before. Kurjota should be more up to speed by this point and should be able to play. Now, Kurjota, as we've seen, is tricky, but more than that, he's a wonderful crosser of the ball. I think he'd be the best crosser of the ball at the club. Fantastic. But they clearly don't deem him up to speed yet. So Chesnikov, who can't be ready, I mean, he's come off a season, he's had a holiday, he's come to a completely new environment. He is playing. I mean, he starts at Ibrox, starts against Hibs, starts against Falkirk. So he's clearly got a lot of support and respect for the management team. I probably didn't read up enough about him. I thought when we signed him, he was an orthodox wing player. He's not. He's a forward player, but he's a bit more of he's an inside forward, maybe
Yeah, that's where he plays for his country.
old money. So he's different to what I thought he would be.
Yeah,
It's right. He shows terrific willingness to track back. He gets stuck in, which goes a long way in Scottish football. His goal was actually far better than I realised at the time. It was very clever. It was a very clever finish. And that will do him the world of good. But he's still, the fact he's gradually get better. I mean, when he came on against Falkirk in the Cup, I know he won a penalty, but he looked way, way short of what you would need. But
yeah.
he's going to take time to adapt. I think that's one where I think people can be quick to criticise and quick to judge a player who's come from a completely different environment into a team that's, a team that's flying, but there's so much expectation around them, and there was so much excitement and noise around his signing. It can't be very easy for him, but I think he's shown signs. He's shown signs in all the games, but I thought he showed the most signs yet on Saturday. He's going to be a very, very valuable player for Hearts.
Unlike a lot of Hearts players, Ewan, I think he'll get better quicker when Lawrence Shanklin's playing in the same team as him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree, and I was thinking about players in their first games who were written off. Remember Thomas Flogel at Ibrox those many, many years
Yes.
ago.
Hmm.
He lasted a half. He got taken off. Who's this dud we've signed? There's been umpteen guys like that. And again, the adjustment wasn't anything like Chesnikov's. Chesnikov's situation to me is, you know, slightly extreme in terms of where he's come from, what he's come into. So I would persevere with him. And the fact that Derek McInnes seems so willing to persevere with him shows he's obviously a fan of his talent. And from what he said, even more so perhaps his attitude. But he's a different. I can't quite pinpoint him as inside forward maybe, but I can't quite
Yeah.
pinpoint exactly what he is. But that eye for goal and that what he does is he gets into very, very good positions in and around the box, and that's worth its weight in gold. If you can then find him and he can start chipping with a significant amount of goals, that'll be fantastic.
The specific minutiae of team selection is far more of a narrative if Hearts don't win the game. Hearts won the
Mm.
game, so the manager is proved correct with the decisions that he's made. Because right now, it's not about how we play; it's about getting the win. No point in Rangers playing well at Livingston if they don't win, Celtic playing well against Hibs if they don't win, Hearts playing well against Falkirk if they don't win. Hearts were the only team that got the win. And I didn't think any of the three that are leading the table right now played particularly well, but only one of them got the victory. I want to take you back to something I said about the BBC Scotland match report from the Falkirk game back in September. Now, neither you or I were there. We both watched it on Hearts TV, but that game was described as a raucous time capsule. What adjective would you use to describe the atmosphere on Saturday at Tynecastle?
You were assuming that raucous was correct in September. Maybe that was maybe the BBC used the wrong word. Maybe it wasn't raucous at all. I don't know.
The fact is that we won by 3 goals to nil. Everything was fine. It could have been more. There was a happiness in the air. I'm not trying to lead the witness here to an extent. Maybe I am. I want to talk about the atmosphere, and it's based on a discussion I listened to this morning on This Is My Story with Liam and the boys. So I wanted to get your take, regardless of what happened in September, because neither of us were there, compared with other Hearts games against non-Old Firm and non-Hibs games this season. How was the atmosphere on Saturday?
Sorry, I'm being obtuse.
I know.
No, I think it was good. I think it was positive. I think people. There was a slight call to arms, wasn't there, before the. Was that before the Hibs game, or was it before that?
No, it was the one before that because we did that the four kind of podcasts in BBC. We did the what was the
What was
midweek game? St
the?
Mirren game. It was the St Mirren game in
Yeah,
midweek.
yeah, and I do think since then people have been generally far more positive. There are bumps and moans and groans, but I sensed on Saturday and towards the end of the game, it didn't feel nervy or anxious. To me, again, it's sometimes difficult when you're in the middle of it, but I didn't sense that. Where actually that Kilmarnock game, I remember distinctly it did that midweek game, and when was that? End of November. Feels like a lifetime ago now.
Mm.
So I think Derek McInnes said something at the he was at the Federation rally with the team
Yes.
yesterday, and I think he called for that. He said, "Look, sometimes just it was along the lines of if they make a bad pass, just pause before you have a go at them. Just remember what they're all doing for you." And I agree completely with that. But we're all football fans. That's easier said than done. It's an emotive afternoon. You go, you shout and ball, and it doesn't mean much sometimes. But people can get uptight and frustrated. But Mark, I've said all along about this. I think this is a great journey, and I think this is great fun. And this is me speaking. I personally have been far, far more relaxed about anything I've seen this season than I would be if Hearts was scraping around in seventh or sixth or whatever it might be, and in my head, underachieving, underperforming. I think this is great, and I think this is to be enjoyed. And as I keep saying, this is the start of a journey. I mean, Hearts have disrupted Scottish football in what is a relatively really short space of time. So I think you relish this and you enjoy it. I understand why people get uptight because, especially now, they can see a big, big prize that's 10 games away potentially, and that means quite a lot. It means a hell of a lot. But I would, and I say to my mates, and maybe it's just the way I think. I just enjoy this. What would you rather be doing? Would you rather be in Aberdeen's position?
Of course.
Would you rather be in Hibs' position, watching what we're doing? This is great. So relish it.
I like your use of the word fun. Like some people find masochism fun. It's not for us all, but the different definition of fun. Bigger picture, of course, we should enjoy it, but it's I'm just as nervy watching Livy Rangers and watching Celtic Hibs as I am watching Hearts these
Yeah,
days. And I'm
I get that. Like but I was certain they would just give a penalty to Rangers for that instant at the end.
likewise.
So I'm feeling
And with Celtic, with the tug of the jersey on Liam's scales.
okay. I wasn't watching. I saw it laterally, but you would, I was incandescent would be too strong, but I was probably ranting and raving. I just assumed it would be a penalty to.
Hmm.
Yeah, I get that. Watching the other games and the impact of other games is a fraught business, but I think maybe we're all getting older. I think watching Hearts in this form and watching what Hearts are doing is to be enjoyed. I mean, why wouldn't you enjoy this?
Yeah, the form's an interesting one because the results are there. The performances maybe not so much, but they're getting enough. The reason I mentioned the fans, I want to tell you what Derek McInnes said about the supporters afterwards. Trying to get praise the role of the home support for their backing. He said, I need to thank the fans because in that little period in the first half, it would have been easy to make the team more anxious. I
Mm.
actually thought they were the opposite. I thought they were brilliant. I think they understand it. I think there are so many at Hearts who this is new to. I think that's a good point. He said, I think they all recognise they have a role to play and it helped the team. We get the goal just before halftime, so rather than coming off to grumbles and all the rest of it, we get the goal in the game and we've got something to hang on to. We spoke at halftime and we're going to try and get the next goal. Like I said, I thought we were the team more likely to get a second goal. So, with those comments, we've heard so often games at Tynecastle, players don't quite get the patience from the stands that they would hope for because of the circumstance. But I remarked straight afterwards in the On the Whistle that Hearts fans at no stage on Saturday ever got on the backs of their
No,
team. And rather than that, they were either quiet or it was a kind of there was an enthusiasm there. How do we go knowing we've only got 5 games left at home? 2 after the split, 3 before the split. How do we go about, and assuming there was a raucous atmosphere against Falkirk, to get that same atmosphere against Aberdeen that we had in the Champions League qualifier in May 2006 against Aberdeen. You might look at it and say, oh, but that was to get into the Champions League, finish second, get into the qualifiers. This is just another league game. This is probably more important. That was to finish second to guarantee second spot before a trip to Ibrox. This is potentially another 3 points towards winning a title that Hearts haven't done in most of our generation. So how do we get that? We've gone from worrying about fans maybe making a noise and putting players off to not making that noise and players a little bit more relaxed to the next step, Tynecastle, first day of the season, for example, the Monday night. How do we get that atmosphere against Aberdeen this weekend?
Well, what that first game of the season and what that game in 2006 had in common was they were night games, and I always think that helps. What I do think is, I think Aberdeen games actually take care of themselves to an extent anyway. There's always a good atmosphere at Aberdeen games. They're always a bit above a Falkirk or a Kilmarnock or a Dundee United even. It's not a Hibs game, but there's always a bit of dig and a bit of atmosphere for an Aberdeen game for various reasons. So I think that will exist. And again, I think the fans basically are on point, are on message that they're going to get behind these players and appreciate what these players have done and not get too uptight or negative towards them. I think we're on that path anyway. But again, I think Aberdeen being an opponent for a game like this is less of an issue than it might be for some other teams. Although, I think as you rightly said, and that was my sense, I think on Saturday in the Falkirk game, generally the vibe, for want of a better word, was all pretty good and pretty positive.
Well, Ryan McGowan, the full-time whistle has now gone, and you're joining us from the changing room, having just finished after Rangers got their 24 hours of added time, but couldn't add to the 2 goals that they scored. Good point, frustrating point. What was it yesterday?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think, obviously we had to ride our luck. I think when you're playing the sort of teams up the top, and especially in the position that we find ourselves in this season, you do need to have that little bit of luck. I think throughout a game, which we certainly did. Jerome in goals was exceptional and kept us in it. But I did also think that we carried a little bit of a threat going forward. We just sometimes, especially when we played Celtic as well, if you kind of put them under pressure and make their defenders actually like full on defend, horrible situations, you can try and catch them on an off minute. And I just think that we carried that threat, or felt like we carried that threat on Sunday. But yeah, it was probably, it's that old one. You would have taken a point before the game, but I think I think it was probably 60-minute mark, sitting 2-0. It felt like we had weathered a little bit of a storm, and the crowd was starting to get onto the Rangers players' backs. But then red card kind of gives them that impetus and gets everyone back on side, and it was basically just an onslaught for the, I don't know, what was it, 100 odd minutes that we ended up playing.
When Cammy Kerrs made that challenge on Mikey Moore, what are you thinking?
So I was super close to it, but it happens so quickly that you don't actually get to see. So when the ref stopped it for VAR, I said, Cammy, did you get it? He's like, yeah, 100% got the ball, 100% got the ball. Don't know what they're checking, 100% got the ball. So you just kind of take them for like face value, and then it wasn't until we get into the change rooms after the game. Like, Cammy, what are you talking about? You didn't even touch the ball. Because sometimes, you can like touch it and then you've wiped them out, or you've wiped them out and then you've got like a little toe to the ball. And Cammy was a bit like, yeah, that's not how I kind of remember it in my head. But, there's obviously going to be a lot of scrutiny around that. But, we had a penalty that wasn't given at Ibrox not that long ago. Not that it would have maybe it would have made a difference. I don't know. So, when sometimes they say these things swinging roundabouts, it kind of feels like a little bit one of those ones.
Well, it's Mark, selective, isn't it, Ewan?
Yeah, I was going to say, if I was a sensible Rangers fan, and they do exist, I would look at I would look at the fact that they're playing a team. This is facts. So I'm not having a go at Ryan, but
careful here.
No. But they haven't won. I mean, Rangers have a £30 million or thereabouts net spend. they're playing a team who haven't won in 25 league games, and they're losing. I mean, the first goal was a fantastic finish, but that's a guy who was in the sixth tier of English football last season. I think Rangers fans should look beyond a late decision like that and not getting a penalty. Like, why were they in that pickle against Livingston? And as far as I'm concerned, if the red card hadn't happened, Livingston would have won that game. I thought they were, good value. I know Rangers a lot of pressure, peppered the goal a lot to an extent, but I was pretty confident that Livingston would win. But the red card totally flipped that. So I think, again, I think they do exist. Sensible Rangers people would divert attention away from the referee's call and look at the game as a whole.
Yeah, I think
Ryan,
from the other perspective, like what you said, I have a few sensible Rangers fans, and what I said earlier was, I wouldn't say that we felt comfortable within the game, but years gone by when you play Celtic or Rangers or a really good at Hearts team or a really good Aberdeen team, you get like ripped wide open. Like they play those quick 1-2s, or they've got the runners from midfield. You just feel like they've got 15 players on the ball. I felt like all of their kind of chances were, shots from 20, 25 yards out, or crosses into the box where they've kind of got contact and then it's dropped down to one of their players. Whereas I didn't feel like they were, playing that one touch or quick football that sort of the real, really good teams
No,
seem to be able to do.
you unsettled them and unnerved them, and you're right. You also carried a threat at the other end. Livingston had other chances in that game. I just wanted to ask you. I was a huge fan of Macaulay Tate as a young. I know he's still a young kid, but when he was a younger kid, and I haven't seen much of him this season. I thought he was terrific in that game yesterday. He was full of energy, broke up play, passed the ball well. I mean, has he really kind of become a first? He obviously is a first team player at Livingston, but has he looked more like a Premiership player as this season has gone on?
Yeah, so I think it's been a really good. So he's been at us literally for a year. It's
Yeah,
6 months at the tail end of last season, and then 6 months at this season. And I think for his own personal development, he's had a really good 12 months in terms of, last season we were, battling for the title, I guess, in top two, and we would have maybe 65, 70% possession, and we're playing out from the back, and we're trying to do, play football and win games. So he was very instrumental in getting it off the centre backs and being able to find those passes, which like you said, I've been a massive fan from him. I think I first seen him when he was 16 or 17. So I was really excited when he came in because I was thinking that's the link that we really
yeah,
need to sort of progress this. Whereas we get promoted, which is great, but then it's a totally different game. Having that step up and having to be sort of battle hardened week in, week out. Like you said, we're on a really bad losing run. We don't have much possession, low on confidence, even change of manager, in and out the team. There's so many like learning curves that I feel like it's been really good for him in
mm,
terms of being able to experience that outside of experiencing it at Hearts, where you have so much pressure. You have 15, 20,000 every week. At Livingston, he can have a poor performance without it being all over Twitter, all over
yeah,
social media. Fans getting on his back. So I feel like he's just really grown. And like you said, I thought he was exceptional on Sunday. It was
yeah,
probably he's had a handful of those performances like he did yesterday in terms of where you just come off the pitch and he was bang at it today. He was really good, and that will come just that consistency
yeah.
of knowing what to do week in, week out. But yeah, I think everyone at Hearts knows the ability that he has on the ball and the way he can play. And I think what we've developed, especially in the last 6 months, is probably that little bit of the ugly side of the game and things that you
Mm,
just, as a midfielder in Scotland, whether you like it or not, that you have to do.
mm.
Chermiti put us to the sword at Ibrox last week.
Mhm.
How did you guys keep him quiet, and what type of players you like to try and mark?
Um,
Just
Again,
kicked him.
yeah, try and kick him as much as you can. That's why I particularly don't like VAR. I used to be able to get away with it back in the day. Um, yeah, it's difficult because Rangers play differently against us than they do against Hearts, and vice versa. We were we kind of almost played three centre backs. So he probably had somebody or almost two of us on him constantly. Whereas when you're playing at home or at Ibrox, for example, and against Hearts who are attacking, there's a lot more space. You can run the channels a little bit more. And I think like all strikers, if your midfielders and your sort of forward players are limiting your service into him or are making it putting pressure on so he's not getting like the perfect pass into him, just makes it really more difficult for him. And I don't know. I just felt that Rangers were a little bit off it on Sunday, for a want of a better word, in terms
Were they
of
complacent?
it's hard to tell. Whether they were complacent, whether they didn't think that we would be as or carry as threat as much as we did. And sometimes you just have like a bit of an off day. We also are fighting for our lives and trying to
Hmm.
get anything that we can. So yeah, it was maybe they were 10-20% off it, and we were 10-15% more than we usually do, and it's so hard for within a game to be able to flip that. And I just felt that, yeah, like you said, when we started, Jerome made a couple of saves, and there was one off the post, and there was a couple of blocks, and you just feel like, this could, maybe our luck's turning a little bit, and then, like you said, just when we're going up front, it felt like we were getting some corners and testing the goalie a little bit. It just felt like one of those days where, we could definitely get something from the game.
What's it like playing in a game where you've got your own fans wanting you to do well, but you've got tens of thousands of Hearts fans wanting you to do well for another reason? Are you thinking about that as a former Hearts player at all? Is that in the back of your mind, wanting to do well, of course, for Livingston, but knowing if you do that it also helps Hearts?
Um, like first obviously before the game and after the game, that comes to your attention. You can't really get away with it. Most of my friends or like even colleagues are Hearts fans or support some sort of type of team, and we're all humans, so we all are interested in how it's going. But definitely not during the game when we went 2-0
Oh,
up. Was
sure.
I thinking this is going to be great for this is going to be great for Hearts, so this is going to be great. But I think when I first heard the Celtic Hibs score over the Tannoy after the game.
Hmm.
Um, so because obviously didn't know what was going on there, and kind of got a bit of a
Well,
cheer
it,
from
fin
the
it
Rangers
finished
fans.
half an hour before your game ended, so.
Yeah, we got a bit of a cheer from the Rangers fans that were leaving, and it wasn't until like you get into the tunnel that you're thinking, oh, Jesus, Rangers have now dropped points. Celtics just got beat. It's been a really good weekend for Hearts, and was able to watch the game against Falkirk on Saturday afternoon, and yeah, I think like what everyone's saying, that they seem to have that bounce back ability. They seem to just be able to grind out, results when they're not particularly playing well. And I think that was probably a prime example of Rangers yesterday, that they didn't play particularly well, um, and they couldn't then get a win. And that's what Hearts seem to have been doing pretty much all season.
It's also say, Mark, Rangers have, it wasn't a one off. Rangers, they were
The
outplayed
last
at
three
Mother.
away games.
Yeah, they were outplayed at Motherwell. They should have lost on balance of play, but they drew. They drew at Easter Road. I think it was a good theory that Hibs should have won that game as well. So it wasn't a one off. The Rangers have done this, and although they've been very, very strong at home, there's a bit of a pattern with their away games.
You've just played Rangers. You played Celtic, and so close to getting what would have been a phenomenal point in the east end of Glasgow. You've got Hearts to come, suggestions being that that might be a Saturday night game, yet to be confirmed, but it's likely to be shown live on television. You've got them at your place as well. So you're in a good position to comment on the top three as an opposition defender. And I know you have your allegiances as well. But from what you've seen so far, Hearts with a 4 point lead over Rangers and a 6 point lead over Celtic with a game in hand. What are you thinking as far as keeping the nerve and the players that they have is concerned with the opposition that you faced?
Uh, but as an opposition player, I feel like all teams are very, very similar. Is why obviously why they're so close in terms of points. I do feel that um, Hearts are probably obviously take away the points um, for a moment are the ones that have everyone behind them, players, staff, fans, owners, board, all seem to be on the same page. I feel like the other two don't have that, especially Celtic. I feel like there's a lot of like managers and the board and the fans. They all seem a little bit putting the blame game everywhere, and I think in terms of when they do get a bad result, I think it just takes away or takes the pressure off that actual result because the fans are now blaming the board, the players are probably blaming the fans for the protest, and everyone's just kind of pointing the finger everywhere. Whereas I feel like Hearts, when they have a bad result, it's almost as if McInnes brings them in on the Monday. They discuss it, they go over it, and then it's like, right, everybody's focused on where we're going on Saturday. And, he says all the right things in the media in terms of getting Tynecastle rocking and the fans support. And the fans are on this massive, huge wave of, they probably get more and more confident with what's going on in Celtic and Rangers than they are probably at the way that the Hearts team is playing at the moment. So from an opposition perspective, I don't think there's much between all three of them. Going into the game on Sunday was confident we can take something off Rangers. When we play Hearts in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be confident that we can get something from that game. But I feel like if you're a Hearts player or trying to deal with that pressure, I think I've seen something that was like 7 wins from the remaining 10 games.
Yeah.
I would
To get
just,
to 81 points, yeah, and that
which
might
I
do it.
think, yeah, which all these geniuses on Twitter can work out what it do, and I just sit there and like different things. Oh, that's interesting, like that.
Did
But
you?
I
Did
think
you? Right.
if you're in that position, sorry,
Right.
fine.
No, carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll say after.
Yeah, so if you're a Hearts player, even if you got beat, that allows you to have 3 poor results. So I think that's what McInnes is really good at. If they lose a game, they're just like, right, that's done. We just need to win a few more, and we've done it. I think that's definitely how they should be looking at this sort of last 10 games of the season.
I was going to say, when you went back to Sydney, did you win the league? Have I got that wrong?
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't play much, obviously.
I
Uh,
actually have won a few things. It just
no,
seems to
sorry,
be every time I go to Scotland to get down the
no,
bottom.
sorry, I jest. But the Sydney, what I was going to ask you was, when you get like 10 games, 8 games towards the end of the season, do players get uptight, or can you just ride the wave of what you're doing, or do players tense up? How would they feel at this point?
Australia was a little bit different because they have like they just call it like the Premier's Plate if you win the league, and then we go into like a final series. So it was more
Like a cup
um,
thing?
gearing up for the final
Yeah.
series because we kind of felt like no one was going to catch us. We were kind of way out in front, so we almost um, like we lost a couple of games. We only needed to say 4 points from the last 7 games or something if we to win. Like, don't quote me on that. We lost a couple, and then we won one. But the focus was then on making sure that when we reached the sort of semi-finals, that we're like fit and firing going into that because that's the big one that you want to win. So that was a little bit different. When we won the league in Q8, it was just a straight out 2-horse race. So players were more just focused on making sure that we can win the games. And then you'd come in after the game, and if the other team had dropped points, it was great. But we just had that mindset of, win the games. If you win the games, it can't control what's happening elsewhere. And, I definitely think McInnes would have been saying that to the Hearts players on Saturday. Go get your 3 points, put them on the board, and then you can sit back and if both of them won on Sunday, then you're all square. If any of them drop points, you're at a bigger advantage. And even the way that the fixtures have worked out, I think they play again on Saturday.
Hmm.
Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Do you mean put another 3 points on the board there, and then those two have got to play each other on Sunday? Um, you just slowly be ticking them off in terms of getting those wins on the board that are needed to win the league.
The best footballing team in the league, I don't think many would argue, is Motherwell. They actually went to St Mirren and didn't worry about what St Mirren might do and played their own game. And well, look, they won by 5 goals to 0.
Meow.
A little bit of saucer of milk for Donaldson there. We can't have everything. I mean, come on. Why aren't we unbeaten having won all 28 games so far? The point I want to make is when they came to your Tony Macaroni Macarena set fair, not fair, full fair, whatever it is, arena and won by
Step
two
there,
goals to nil.
Marina.
Thank you. At the end of January, they're flying right now, and they've got a Celtic and they've got Hearts before the split. Can you see a scenario whereby the top three right now, in whichever order, is not the top three come the end of the season because Motherwell are in there?
Definitely. Like you said, when you're asking what it's like playing against those three, it's probably a harder game against Motherwell. As a centre back or as anyone, we all came off that pitch. We got beat 2-0, but it could have been 5 or 6. And it was they're a real well drilled, fluid footballing team. I enjoy watching them play. Enjoy watching them play. I didn't particularly enjoy playing against them. I feel like they've almost got that perfect balance in terms of the players that they needed for each of those positions. And then I think, I see a lot of people being like, oh, what a manager he is because he's got O'Donnell and McGinn and, other players playing this total expansive football. But when you actually strip it all back, it's just purely simple, electric football. He's not asking anyone to do anything crazy or go on mazy runs and score from 30 yards. He just every player is so well coached and organized that when McGinn or O'Donnell has the ball, they only have 15-yard passes, but it's the angle that the midfielders are coming off, and the midfielders are then able to play at one touch around the corner because they know that's where the wingers should be, and the patterns of play, you can just tell that it's almost second nature, and that becomes so hard to defend against because you're always reacting to something that they know is going to happen in 2, 3, 4 passes. And I think that's probably the biggest credit you can get. And like you said, they will influence who wins this league. I have no questions about that. That you can't tell me that when they play, so it's Hearts, they still play Hearts twice, Celtic twice, and Rangers once. You can't tell me they're going to lose all of those games.
That's a good point. You'd be amazed if they lost all those games.
What is it? They've won 20 odd in a row. They've conceded 8 goals, and then they're just going to go on a 5-game losing streak. They're not. So the law of averages is they're going to beat some of them in those games. It'll probably be, that will be where the sort of tide or something changes, and then who knows? With how crazy the season's been, if Motherwell go and win all their games, it's going to make it really, really interesting in terms of the informed team coming into the sort of split, I guess.
You must have you played with a manager like that, Ryan, who's complete trust. So if you make a mistake playing the way he demands you to play, it's okay. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get turfed out of the team, and it's going to be a problem for you. It must be great for those boys as well, right? Because they have the complete faith in the managers to do what they're doing.
Yeah, it was probably the closest I had that was Ange, but that was national team level.
Yeah.
And he couldn't transfer this year because he couldn't leave.
You want him to be the Hearts manager, right?
Yeah. Mark will stand by me that a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago before it all happened. I thought he'd be a perfect fit.
But he's the same. He was just you play that way, and if you get it wrong, it's on me. It's okay.
He used to get we do a lot of video and a lot of analysis of how he wants to play, and training was just focused on how he wanted to play. You'd be doing this passing drill and you'd be thinking, wow, this is a great passing drill. And then afterwards he'd be like, he'd zoom out onto his laptop and he'd have it up on as a graphic, and he'd almost put the passing drill onto a certain area of the pitch. He's like, this was right at the start. He's like, you think that this passing drill was just a passing drill that I was bored and made up? He's like, this is it here. And so all of a sudden, then when you're going into passing drills, you start thinking, right, I'm standing on this cone. I'm not just standing on the cone. I'm the right centre back, or I'm the centre midfielder, or I'm the six. So, without even knowing, and a lot of footballers aren't the brightest, you end up just doing these patterns without actually knowing that that's what's going to happen in the game, and these are game related scenarios that you're going to be in. So he was probably someone that just was, like you said, was just totally and utterly, you play this way, and if you do that, you'll be successful. If you don't, or you go very off it, he would hit the roof and you'd go crazy. If you made a mistake in it, then he wasn't bothered. The risk to reward of that mistake was, you're gonna make mistakes. Motherwell did it. I think they passed it to the goalie passed it to the Celtic boy and he scored straight away. That is part of the sort of betting in process of doing it. You need to make these mistakes. You need to get used to it, but don't then go, so if he was the manager there, and if the goalie just booted it and was just like, whoa, I was getting stressed there, it was too much, Ange would have went through that goalie. Whereas you'd all be coming off afterwards thinking, oh my God, the goalie just passes a strike and we've lost the game. And you'd be like, well, that's what happens, and you'll work out why it didn't happen.
In fairness to Derek McInnes, there's been a few times he's lost his shit in the technical area because someone's taken the easy option of going back or playing it sideways, and that's something he's wanting as well, to be brave in possession, because when you've got a slow build up, you've played all over the world, Ryan. You've watched games all over the globe. I've commentated on them as well. It's no secret that the quicker the build up, passing the ball, getting it forward as quickly as possible, you've got more chance of scoring because you can upset the opposition who are not quite ready. But if you play everything in front of them, slow and whatever, do you think both Livingston at one end of the table with that massive game against St Mirren and Hearts at the other end of the table, do you think they've got the brave players right now and the ethos from their respective coaches, Marvin Bartley and Derek McInnes, that regardless of the pressure, whether it's at that end of the table or the other end of the table, that bravery should be something that the players can still do rather than have the fear of consequence? Oh, what if I make a mistake?
I think for Livingston first, we have a strong belief that we can get out of the situation that we're in. And sort of Marvin said that since sort of the day he had the job, is that he fully believes that we can get in. And I think the players are now, 100% on board of, it's not like it's the last chance, hurrah, but, the games are running out. We're running out of games, but we feel like we're in games a lot more. Again, like last minute goal at Celtic Park, and then 2-0 down, coming back to 2-2 at Dundee, then getting a draw against Rangers. We feel like we're starting to, not put a run together as such, but we're starting to build up a momentum and trying to get these results. So, as much as we're not trying to win the game to win a league, we're trying to stay in the league. So we have a lot of pressure on us trying to do that, but we have that inner confidence, I think, from recent results, that we will hopefully get 3 points and get closer to the teams above us. Talking from the outside looking in for Hearts is, I think you would just be saying we've done this all season. They've handled the pressure all season, well, basically most of the season. You hear so many people, oh, that's a bubble burst or that's a poor result. They just continually do the right things, and they've got such a good, trying to think of the right word. They've got so many different ways of winning a game, which is a sign of a very, very good team. That they've blown teams out of the water. They've scored some fantastic goals. They've gone the ugly side and rolled their sleeves up and just nicked the goal and held on for a 1-0. They've done it with 10 men. So I think if you're McInnes or a Hearts player, you'll just be thinking, let's just do what we've been doing all season. Let's just worry about ourselves, go out there. Yes, I think all managers want that sort of perfect performance, and all players, you want to play forward and you want to do the right things and get the ball into the opposition box. And, I think McInnes will just be getting, not frustrated as such, but he'll just be wanting to I've heard him speak about that 1-0, and he wants to kill off teams. Even against us, Livingston and Hearts, they battered us the first 45 minutes. I think again, Jerome made a couple of great saves. It was one touch. It was actually it felt like it was in a washing machine in terms of everyone just running around everywhere. But then because they didn't get that second goal, it just naturally fans start getting a little bit uneasy. I think Kilmarnock had scored a late one a couple of weeks earlier. So that just creeps into your mind. It starts creeping into you when you're playing. The fans, the manager, everybody starts getting that little bit nervous. So I think his frustration will be not going and putting teams to the sword in terms of 2-0, 3-0, and then being able to sort of not relax as such, but see out the game a little bit more comfortably. I think that's what he'd be wanting between these games between now and the split.
You actually touched, Mark, on an interesting point. If the Motherwell manager tried to implement what he's doing at Hearts, that's doubly difficult. You know what Tynecastle's like. If Hearts players started making mistakes early on in that kind of system, you know what the crowd would be like. I think it's a bit easier at Motherwell. Like, obviously, it helps. He's been fantastic at it. They're doing really well. But I think trying to implement that style of play or something close to that at Hearts is tricky. The fans want the ball forward quickly. They want aggressive football. We all know what the best teams we've watched. It would be the first defender passing it to a centre forward who scores, or the first goalie doing that. All hell would break loose at Tynecastle watching that kind of thing. So it's not easy. Ryan, you must know that having played there.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know what else was also really interesting is we played Motherwell at the start of the season. I think it was maybe this, I don't know, say sixth or seventh game, and we were 1-0 up at half time, and that at that time put Motherwell bottom of the league.
Mm.
So I can't remember exactly what game it was, but Motherwell, if we beat Motherwell that day, they would have went bottom of the league.
So I'm
That
not
turnaround.
so I'm not saying that's accepted at Motherwell, but can you imagine that at Tynecastle or at Easter Road
Yeah.
or at Pittodrie? Like, it would be pretty hot.
Yeah, it would be. It's difficult, but I think that's what you get. Not what you get as such, but you know, I've kind of said Derek McInnes is almost the perfect Hearts manager for a long time in terms of how he wants his teams to play and what fans or what the club is kind of renowned for or enjoy. And I think that's been a good fit for a long time. And it's just happened to have come in this season and been able to have the players that he actually he always likes tricky wingers. He always likes a, a a target man or a vocal point to score goals. Kind of has two centre midfielders that are good on the ball but can do both sides of the game, and then he has a back four that's doesn't do anything crazy, doesn't do anything but limit their mistakes, simplify the game, and that's exactly what most Hearts fans want from their team.
Mm.
You've got St Mirren twice. You've got Kilmarnock twice. You've got Dundee once, Aberdeen once, and Dundee United twice. Hearts win all their games, they're champions. Livy get the majority of points against the majority of teams in the bottom six. And it could be a double celebration in your household come the summer.
You know
Confident to
what
stay
help?
up?
You know what? Sorry, Ryan can answer for himself. You know what's interesting? Kilmarnock, I think, have picked up in terms of performances, but they haven't really pulled away from Livingston at all. Obviously, we know the situation Livingston are in, but it's not as if Kelly's new manager has triggered a real bounce that's pulled them away from the bottom. That must give you a boost, Ryan, right?
Yeah, massively, and I think a lot of people not dislike the split or the top six, bottom six, but it also gives you that chance. If these last 10 games were, two against Celtic, two against Hearts, we would just be thinking, oh, gee, like we're going to need a miracle. Whereas, like you said, we're playing the teams that are either directly above us or close to us, some of them twice between now and the end of the season. We beat St. Mirren on Saturday, which hopefully in Kilmarnock don't get a result. I think we'll be then 5 points behind Kilmarnock and maybe six
Mm-hmm.
behind St. Mirren. And all of a sudden it was dead and buried a couple of weeks ago to now there's three teams in this, sort of drop playoff position. So yeah, that's what we as a team or as a club are really focused on is making sure that we're kind of almost hitting our form, for lack of a better word, between now and the end of the season and can go on that little bit of a run and get out of it, right at the last minute.
That Livingston Hearts game is the game that's been penciled in by Lawrence Shankland for him to make his comeback following the international break. Your wee pal, Cammy Devlin's hoping to be back by the Kilmarnock trip to Rugby Park. So it might be slightly similar to the Hearts side that you faced at Tynecastle earlier this year. Are Hearts going to win the league? Do they have what is required in this division to hold off Rangers and Celtic? Or can we turn it around and say it's not necessarily Hearts having to win the league, but Rangers or Celtic might not get to the points required to do what they need to win the league because there's I'm not seeing so much strength among the other sides, but there's just a lack of consistency. You're not going to get someone winning the last 10 games of the season. That's going to benefit Hearts, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're basically 2 games ahead of everybody else with the points difference. Is that right? And the goal difference. Near
Goal
enough.
difference. One better off
The
than
Celtic.
Rangers and 4 points clear of Rangers. Celtic, 6 goals better off,
Yeah.
6 points, but they have to go to
Game ahead.
Pittodrie.
So it's roughly 2 game swing of a 10-game season. So when you look at it like that, they are favourites in terms of to win the league. As scary as that is when you say it out loud to your Hearts friends or people that have were there in '86 and are starting to get really nervous about how close Hearts are to winning this league. But if you were to say to anyone, you'd be 4 points clear of Celtic and Rangers, who have again gone back to Twitter. I'm pretty sure Celtic have lost 7 or 8 games this season, 6, 7. I think it's the most they've ever. So 7
games, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think a team's ever won a league having lost that many. I don't. Again, I love Twitter. It could just be some random guy putting out fun stats that aren't true.
I thought you
but,
had twins. I thought you were busy kind of looking after them, not scrolling through some brain rot in social media.
I just you're the worst for it, sending screenshots in of some random guy on Twitter's post.
I got that. I get the same one. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's not so much Hearts having to go out and actually win all of these games. I think they just need to manage the games that they're going to win. They'll probably McInnes would have probably penciled these last 10 games and been like, could probably afford to lose that one. Need to win that. Need to win that. Need to win that. He's probably going to have to pick 6 games that he has to win. Because like we said, Motherwell aren't going to lose all 5 games or win all 5 games against those other teams. Celtic and Rangers are still to play each other twice. Someone's going to be dropping points left, right, and centre. So it's just.
I think Ryan, the stat you saw, which is correct, is that Celtic have lost 7 games this season, which is the same as the number of games they've lost the previous 2 combined. I think it was 4 and 3 the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah,
so it's quite a stat, that, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think and I think that's the other thing is in years gone by, if you were to say Celtic need to win the next 10 games to win the league, I think everyone would be like, they could do that. They could do that 4-0 every game. Whereas there's probably not that same feeling amongst the sort of Celtic and Rangers fan base that they even believe that their teams could be able to do that.
When you look at Rangers, 13 of their 28 games they haven't won. So to suddenly think they're going to go and win their last 10. For Celtic, lost 7 already out of 27. To think they're suddenly going to go and win all the 10. I hope I'm right, but I think we might get to the stage where Rangers and Celtic just run out of games.
Well, Celtic. I'm going to Stuttgart on Thursday for this Celtic game. Celtic got a really, what I think is a pretty arduous run coming up. They go to Stuttgart. They go to Ibrox. They go to Pittodrie. Then they go to Ibrox again in the cup. Now, that kind of run, even psychologically, to me,
is that like a space of 10 days as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's Motherwell.
So that even before Motherwell, I think even psychologically, that makes or breaks your season to me. Because can you get through that? I mean, the Stuttgart game's almost a write-off. I'd be surprised if they played anything close to a strong team there. But they've got to come back, go to Ibrox again in the cup, Aberdeen in between on that pitch. It's just, from what I've seen with Celtic, they've been clinging on for a while, and they've got a team made up of a lot of loan signings, short-term players, other players who to me look as if they're running out of steam a little bit. So if Celtic come through this run unscathed, fair play to them, but I'm not sure they will. I think this run could cause them a serious problem for one reason or another. And it started already, obviously, with the Hibs defeat.
What's a good result for Hearts when Rangers face Celtic on Sunday? Ewan.
I see a lot of people saying Celtic win, but I don't quite agree with that because they've got that game in hand. If Celtic win, then go to Pittodrie and win, that edges them closer. So I would say a draw, I think, is the obvious answer to. Maybe there's some equation that means that's not right, but my instinct would say we want a draw there. Is that wrong? I don't know.
Well, a draw, both of them are dropping 2 points.
Yeah.
That's probably the best. Ryan, what do you think is the best outcome for Hearts when Rangers face Celtic on Sunday?
Yeah, I would probably say a draw. If, there is that sort of saying of if one of them was to, I think especially if they were both, I think everyone sees a 6 point gap without realizing that it's the 3 points. But what could be psychologically huge would be if Hearts win at the weekend and Celtic lost and it goes to 9 points. So it would be 9 points with 9 games to go. That would be that's a big, even for as a player, I guess you'll be looking at that thinking, oh my God, there's zero room for error between that and the end of the season. Because if they do again, after that run, they go to Motherwell and they draw, you could almost, be, you could be thinking, right, that's going to be a mountain to climb with the remaining games available. So I do see why. There's just so many different scenarios, I guess, and it is quite exciting to think of all the different possibilities, and all the while, if you're a Hearts fan, of having that 4 point cushion, I guess, but needing to win on Saturday and then being able to sort of watch everybody else and see what they do.
Let's wrap this up with you then. I'm going to give you 11th place right now. You'd have to go through a playoff to stay up. Would you take that if offered that right now for Livy?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think the position we find ourselves in, you'd take that in a heartbeat. But, we've said it as well. It doesn't matter when it could be the 95th minute of the last day that we get out of bottom place and into that playoff spot. But, I truly believe, and I think the whole group, staff, people working behind the scenes, players, that we believe that we'll be able to get out of the situation that we find ourselves in.
If you do that, Ryan, if you end up in the playoff coming from the position you're in now, you'd actually have a lot of, what's the word?
Momentum would
be
huge.
That's exactly the word I was looking for. You would go into it really positive and flying, given where you've come from. So it's weird how football works, isn't it?
And that's what we're trying to do, even getting into the split. If we're going into the split, having sort of cut back, I think it was probably at 1 point 11 points. And if we had maybe cut it down to 2 or 3, still to play those 5 teams above us, we would be the ones that everyone's going, whoa, you'd then find other teams that are on the back of, not picking up points or on a losing run. And we've got that little bit of a momentum. And that's what we've got to have to try and strive towards between now and the end of the season.
Thank you for your company, and thank you for making time for us. I know you've got the twins and all the other kiddos running about. Yeah, for now.
But now,
never mind that. Thank you for the result yesterday, Ryan.
Indeed.
I know. I did have.
Thank you very much.
I had a few messages. I had a few. Cammy Devlin just sent me the little shaking hands emojis. So yeah, I had a few messages on Twitter and messages from friends of that result. So it was like you said, as much as you don't think about it, I think everybody that was involved in that game yesterday was getting messages because as much as everyone's a bit like Scottish football's not that great, I think this season everyone's really, really enjoying what we're talking about in terms of all these twists and turns that's going to happen between sort of now and the end of the season.
Well, get well soon. That's the message I shall be sending you on the 3rd of April when you pick up a tachys physa's illness prior to the Aberdeen Cup game and aren't available for the Hearts game, which is a shame because you go into that on the back of winning against St Mirren, winning at Easter Road, winning against Kilmarnock. But you don't need the 3 points against Hearts because you've won the previous three. So get well soon for that one. Thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you again soon.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Good man. Listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald's Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Our thanks to Ryan McGowan. Good luck to him and to Livy against St Mirren and Kilmarnock in that battle to stay up. But our focus between now and the end of the show with Ewan Murray of The Guardian is Hearts against Aberdeen. Not quite as in-depth in the Falkirk game, but to be honest, it wasn't that much to go in depth about. Hearts getting the lead just before half-time. Good to see Chesnikov getting his first goal. And to be honest, really comfortable in the second half. As Ewan mentioned earlier, I'm not saying we weren't nervous, but apart from one or two half chances, Alex Schwolow wasn't really troubled. So that sets us up nicely for a game against Aberdeen this weekend. It's just a weird fixture, Ewan Murray, in that the away teams for the past decade nearly have really struggled in this fixture. Let's hope that continues this weekend.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to. You're good with that. What is the stat for home victories? It's outrageous, isn't it? The succession of home wins.
Yeah, Aberdeen haven't won at Tynecastle since 2017, and Hearts haven't won since Abiola Dowda's goal at
Oh yeah.
Pittodrie the year before. So that's
Um,
nearly a decade ago.
yeah. Again, as I said before, these tend to be pretty big atmosphere, lively games. I think that helps the Hearts players. Um, Aberdeen are clearly in a bit of a mess. I wouldn't be, although I think they'll be okay. I wouldn't be entirely convinced they'll stay clear of the playoff situation. You know, they're close enough to be worried about it, and the managerial situation has rumbled on for what 50 days or something, pretty unsatisfactory. They've signed a lot of players, a lot of whom look not fit enough actually, not robust enough yet for the Scottish game. There's clearly an understandable discontent from their fans towards the way things are going on. So you put that together, there's no excuse for Hearts in current position not winning. The danger, and this is a danger with a lot of these games, is that for Aberdeen this would be a big deal to give Hearts a problem, to trip up Hearts, like the game at Easter Road was for Hibs and the game at Tynecastle for Hibs. So and it would be the same in reverse. It's a big deal for these clubs to try and be seen to stop Hearts' run. So that's the big danger, and that's a psychological thing. I think if you strip it back to simple football terms, at home Hearts should win. The only issue again is they're dropping like flies, aren't they? In central midfield, Stuart Finlay also, we need to see what's happening. A lot of injuries and a lot of disruption. That makes things non-straightforward. But with everything that Hearts have got at stake, and as what seems to be the freakish run of home wins in this fixture, you should be confident that this should be a home win.
Apologies in advance if this triggers some form of PTSD. But here's the Hearts lineup the last time an away side won this fixture. It was the 7th of May 2017 when Aberdeen, with goals from Adam Rooney, equalised by Isma, and then Anthony O'Connor scored the winner.
Was that when Jamie Walker was sent off?
Yes.
That was the last game of the old main stand at Tynecastle. There you go. That's why I remember that. Wow, so that was the last time. Wow, okay.
Here's the lineup. This is incredible. Jack Hamilton in goal. Andras Struna. Leonard Soa. Aaron Hughes. Prince Bouaben. Christian Novak. Arnaud Jum. Alexandros Cholis. Isma. Jamie Walker. And Don Cowie. Subs that came on: Liam Smith, Chule, Bjorn Johnson. Unused subs: Victor Norring, Perry Kitchen, Rory Curry, and, drumroll, Mallory Martin.
Wow.
That seems like a generation ago.
So that was the end of a season that was filtering away badly under Ian Cathro, and he then starts the League Cup campaign the following season and gets sacked after the Dunfermline League Cup game. That's the chronology of that, isn't it?
Yep, 5th in the table. Who were we chasing in 4th that season?
I don't remember that, but I remember that I was in some form of hospitality in the old main stand because that was the last day of the old main stand, and I remember it being a kind of dismal afternoon, typified by Walker's red card at the team. The weird thing, I speak about this a lot. Cathro's regime started the game against Rangers. Was it 4-0, 4-1 at Tynecastle? Jamie Walker scored twice. Hearts were absolutely fantastic. A couple of games like that right at the start, and then it fell off a cliff. And actually, when you read that team out to me, it's probably no wonder it fell off a cliff.
Oof.
But I remember that season, yeah, just been frittered away and been very, very unsatisfactory. So that was it's an extreme example, but that's an example of why I say, would you rather have a situation like that heading into the end of the season, or would you rather have what we're watching now, which is so incredibly exciting and uplifting? Now, I understand there is middle ground, and I understand people getting anxious about things, but this is great. So sorry, I'm going to force home that point. That's yeah. There's some scary names in that. The lad on the bench, what what did you call him? He was a
Mallory Martin.
No, not him. No, he was a lone player from Stoke City, winger. He was awful.
Chule, the Moroccan.
Yes, he was horrendous.
Came on for Leonard. So what? The team Hearts were chasing down in fourth was St Johnstone.
Geez, oh, right.
That's less than a decade ago. The turnover of players, and I know it's nearly 10 years. This is May 2017. But from then to here, if that doesn't kind of make you think, as you've quite rightly and succinctly pointed out, if that doesn't kind of make you think, you know what, this is rarefied air. And hopefully this is, as you've always said since joining us, this is the start of something. This isn't a flash in the pan. This is what we're hoping. That Tony Bloom's coming in and he wants to disrupt.
It's not a flash in the plan either.
Flash in the plan. There you go. So yeah, that was the last time there was a home win. Hopefully that record continues.
An away win
this weekend. Away win. Jesus, my head's all minced.
And Dowda, I thought was quite a good player. He was wonderfully quick. He was a bit. I think his scoring record actually was pretty good in a short space of time.
Well, that was the season before, yeah, because that was our last victory. That was nearly a year to the day before. It was the Thursday night.
That was
scored.
Robbie Nielsen's team. I quite liked Dowda. He didn't really seem to leave much of a lingering impression, and it didn't go into much afterwards. But I thought he was okay.
Yeah, we're in danger of becoming Jack and Victor and the clan.
Sorry, yes.
Now, just after a few pints, just gibbering about Isa and whatever. Prediction for the weekend. What have you got? Is this a statement win weekend for Hearts?
Yeah, I think so. I think I hope this is not famous last words, but I was always a bit more worried about Falkirk for various reasons than I was about the Aberdeen game. And as it turned out, as I said, Falkirk didn't really provide that much resistance. But I think they'll build on that. I think they're bound to have a less, I think, fraught and troubled build-up in terms of personnel. You're not going to have a key midfielder lost in the warm-up, I wouldn't have thought. So I think and hope this will be more straightforward. So I'm going to go for 3-0. Hearts will win on Saturday and put real heat on both halves of the Old Firm for Sunday.
And name one of the Hearts scorers, please.
Oh, I'm terrible at this. Claudio Braga. Yeah, that's a boring answer, but he's playing very well. I thought Ibrox was absolutely outstanding, and I think he'll be good for a goal this weekend.
Someone who's overdue a Tynecastle goal. I don't think he's scored at home since the Celtic game. He did score at Tannadice, is Alexandros Kiziridis. So I'll go him and a 2-0 Hearts win. Hopefully relatively comfortable. And then we can put our feet up and hope that there's 22 red cards and police horses on the field and God knows what else.
Well, that's the big that's the thing. That's why these back-to-back Old Firm games are important from that point of view. They're going to they'll both go hell for leather in back-to-back weekends. That's bound to have an impact. I mean, that's not an insignificant point from Hearts' point of view. I think that matters. They're going to run each other into the ground, so that's not to be ignored.
Indeed. So there you go. We've beaten Falkirk. There's 10 games to go. We're clear at the top of the table after a little bit of help from our Lothian friends at the weekend. But it's one more game, and it's 3 more points up for grabs this weekend. and then let Rangers and Celtic do their thing on Sunday. My thanks to Ryan McGowan and to Ewan Murray. I'm Mark Donaldson. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for your company. Bye for now.